In 1966, the Chicago Bears drafted the son of a Pennsylvania coal miner in the 4th round. Doug Buffone would go on to play 15 seasons for the Bears and later be named one of the 100 greatest Bears of all time. His allegiance to the Bears never waned, even when he took to the microphone and witnessed some horrendous Bears teams.
The fact is, there's not the fear put into them, because this game is a lot about fear. You either do the job, or you go home and go sell hamburgers at McDonald's.
Doug told it like it is, and that's part of the reason his nephew John has dedicated this show to Doug. And now John Buffone is spreading Buffone-branded beratements just like his uncle.
Being a Chicago Bears fan is like being in a toxic relationship that you can't get out of. I think I'm finally done, and then they come back and they say, well, things are going to be different this time. I've changed. We've got receivers now. We've got the quarterback now. And even though I've heard this song and dance before, I go back every time.
And he's got pep talks too.
I love this team. And I know everyone watching and listening loves this team. So while we may be pessimistic and cynical, every one of us still has hope that the stars will align at some point. And if that ever does happen, you'll be glad you stuck around.
John is telling it like it is here on Buffone 55. And joining John are Alyssa Barbieri, managing editor of USA Today's NFL Wires, including Bears Wire, and also Danny Shimon, lead game and draft analyst for the Barroom Network. Buckle up and bear down. This is Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55. I'm John Buffone, and for the Bears, it's happening again. It's not raining, it's pouring. On Sunday, the Bears lost their 11th consecutive game to the Packers. Matt Eberflus has coached 5 of those losses. The team's overall record under Eberflus has dropped to a 14-30 record, and his latest loss is another in a growing list of games where the majority of the blame is being put directly at the Bears head coach. We'll break it all down and talk about what's next. But first, let me introduce my buddy, the podfather, Aldo Gandia, filling in for Alyssa Barbieri, who lost her voice, and it's a little tough to do a podcast when you don't have a voice. So hope you get better, Alyssa. Aldo, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. I imagine that she lost her voice because she was yelling at the TV, yelling at Matt Eberflus. So get well, Alyssa, and stop watching Bears games for your good health.
For your health.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I wonder if all of the Bears fans are starting to feel this energy that maybe Eberflus's career with the Chicago Bears is coming to an end. Do you get that sense?
Well, I would say that yes, everyone believes it's been coming to an end for a while. Now, when that's actually going to happen, that's up to debates, because we know that the Bears don't fire anyone mid-season, despite the fact there's every reason to fire a head coach in the middle of the season. They just don't do it because it's, because all of the, I don't know, whatever they built up throughout the years to think that they have the gusto to not do that. But anyway, I think most Bears fans, most pundits, most people on TV, radio, newspaper, they see the writing on the wall. This thing's going to be done. It's just when and where. And if I had to guess, they're probably going to wait to the last game of the season. They're going to wait to the end of the year, and that's when they're going to can them.
Yeah, I wonder if that is a Virginia McCaskey edict that the team and George, who is so loyal to his mom, wants to continue to carry on, that the organization is going to be run that way. And, if that's the case, somebody should convince her that there is value in firing a coach in the middle of the season or somewhere in the season. You can start your head coach search earlier. Agents will know, and you can start to do some legwork behind the scenes, not doing actual interviews, but you can start really digging into the Rolodex and calling people and doing background checks on people. There's value in getting a head start on bringing in a new head coach.
Most of the time, Aldo, I would make fun of you for referencing a Rolodex, but I believe that the Bears probably still use a Rolodex. If I had to guess one franchise in the NFL that uses a Rolodex still, it would probably be the Chicago Bears. But at any rate, yeah, I mean, there are advantages to it. You can start interviewing people in the playoffs now, and if you know that you're going to be on the hunt for a head coach, you already start building up that process of who are we going to go after, who are we going to be analyzing throughout the next few weeks of who we're going to target, and maybe some of the Bears in the front office are already doing that, but at least you don't have to be, sly about it if you've already let go of your head coach. And, some traditions are not worth keeping up as far as we don't fire anyone mid-season, because that just shows that you're going to be stubborn for the sake of being stubborn. Like, you're not, what's the sense of, if you already know this guy is gone, then what's the point? Yeah, you fired the offensive coordinator. Maybe they don't want to be like, we fired the offensive coordinator this week, we don't want to fire the head coach the very next week. And quite frankly, they're probably running out of people to promote up and to make interim. But yeah, I just think that if you know what you're going to do, let it go. Not to be too much of a Disney movie, but let it go.
And I believe the biggest value is in just moving on for the players' sake. You don't want Caleb's first season to be in a culture that is about losing. You don't want players to get complacent. We're going to talk a lot about the defense when Danny Shimon comes in here for Buffone's Basement. And one of the things the three of us are going to talk about is whether this defense is starting to be complacent, because it's not playing as well as it used to. So maybe it's just a departure of Billings in the middle, but we'll get to it. But first, we've got some other business to take care of.
Yeah. I believe we're changing up the format a bit to deal with the crisis at Hallis Hall. We did that last week. The crisis still exists, so we're just going to make more tweaks this week.
That's right. By the way, John, do you remember when we first started this show 8 years ago, the B55 segment, which is where you answer a question within 55 seconds in honor of your uncle, Doug Buffone? You used to do 10 of those in the show. We'd start the show with 5 B55s and we end the show. Do you recall that?
Yeah, you guys used to put me through the ringer, man. I'm not that young anymore. I can't do that. I got that's a lot of stress, and that's 55 seconds 10 times. That's a lot of ranting. I don't know if I have the lung capacity for that anymore. So we had to dial it back a little bit, which I appreciate.
Well, I hear you. Well, when Alyssa came in, she was the one that changed it to 5 questions, which was a great idea. And this episode, what we're going to do is just one question. We're going to ask you a question that you have 55 seconds to respond in. And again, that's because Doug Buffone wore number 55, and so you're doing it in honor of him. Then after that, we'll bring in Danny Shimon. Do you like this plan?
Yeah, it saves me a little bit of blood pressure, because every time I get into those 55 rants, those veins in the neck start popping out, and I eventually it'll be the end of me. So we'll just scale it back a little bit today.
Danny was the first one to point that out, and I started to fixate on your neck when these rants. So we'll see. Now, This one is one, and it's kind of an overall question, a general question. I want your sentiment on this Bears team, the coaching staff, and just the overall question. And so, usually you do 5 of these, and so that would be like 4 minutes and 35 seconds of ranting. So you've got to concentrate all that 4 minutes and 55 and then to just 55 seconds. So I'm putting the clock on the screen, and take it away.
Jeez. Well, I'm not going to say anything that hasn't already been said. This Bears team plays scared and has a head coach that doesn't seem to think that yards matter. The 13 yards he conceded at the end of the Washington game that set up the Hail Mary didn't matter. The amount of yards that they could have gained in the last 30 seconds against the Packers didn't matter. And he has refused to say he would do anything differently. We talked about this earlier in the year, but NFL games are always so close and come down to the details. That's why there's only a few games per week where the spread spread is more than one score. And if you don't botch a Hail Mary and you make that field goal, the Bears are 6-4. But we said the same stuff last year when they blew games against Denver and Detroit and Cleveland. It's not a coincidence that the Bears keep coming out on the short end of these games. Over the last 3 seasons, they've blown 5 leads with a 90% chance or higher of winning. That isn't just bad luck. That's a complete lack of game awareness. It's amazing that the one move that should have been made has not been made.
It's amazing. Great job, John. You deserve that 65 seconds there. It's too bad that Doug didn't wear 65.
I had to put it into injury time there. It's okay.
Let me bring in Danny Shimon right now. And Danny, how are you? You've been listening to us talk about Eberflus. I'm going to present the video to kind of set the stage. But you got any initial thoughts about Eberflus you want to share?
Well, guys, you guys know me, man. I've been wanting to get rid of this guy since last year. I thought if you got rid of the whole entire offensive coaching staff, you just bring in a young quarterback, you just bring in a new coach and just kind of build with. You have the young quarterback build with that coach, preferably an offensive-minded coach, but not necessarily, right? So, I've been on that bandwagon. This was one of my biggest concerns coming into the season, where I know they're hyped up with the hard knocks and everything, but I just had a feeling like Eberflus was still, for me, was a defensive coordinator masquerading around as a head coach, and then that's come to fruition here, unfortunately, in the last few weeks here or so. But I mean, my only thing is, and John, you touched on in your rant here, is like they have not. They wear McCaskey's wear as a badge in terms of not firing a head coach in the middle of the season. But Aldo, I think he made a great counterpoint, because what they're doing now is this culture is, as you can see, more and more players. I have not seen players come out and just be openly critical of the coaching staff. Obviously with Shane Waldron initially, but even with Eberflus, even defensive players are coming out and just kind of blasting him in their own way in the media. And I just think everyone talks about the culture he's building and everything in the locker room, but that could just easily disintegrate. And what I would do, and I think, because you look at the schedule, I don't think they're going to win another game. Moving on, I'm not going to pick them for another game to win another game going on. In terms of the schedule, so this could be something. Actually, I'm going to go on record. I think they will fire Eberflus before the season goes. Because I think it's gonna happen where he's already lost 4 in a row. I could easily see him losing the next 5. That's a 9-game losing streak. Added to the one they had going last year. It wouldn't
be his worst one, Danny.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be his worst one. So I think they're gonna just kind of put him. It's gonna be the person gonna be getting hard on him. It's gonna be intense. It's gonna be in terms of the media pressure and all scrutiny, all that stuff. I think they're just gonna put him out of his misery and maybe let him go, and then let Thomas Brown hopefully take over the coaching. That's what I think is going to happen. But I've been wrong before, so we'll see.
Well, that sets the stage for a robust discussion. Let's play this video. And by the way, everyone in the chat room, I see some questions are already starting to come in. 3.5, my good buddy, has already submitted a question for Danny, and more questions are coming in. I'm collecting them all, and we'll get to them in our next segment, sometime during the Buffone 55 segment. Or I should say Buffone's basement. John will entertain those questions. So here it is. I sat down to do this video, and I was going to do a video that encapsulated every one of Matt Eberflus's 30 losses with the Chicago Bears. And I started to do it, and I started to get depressed. I said, I can't do this. My blood was boiling, and I said, you know what? Instead, I'm going to make my case why the Chicago Bears should make a change.
So again, I know disappointing, and we should have had a walk-off field goal win there. And again, that didn't happen. And we just got to look at the operation there at the very end. But I was proud of the guys, the way they battled. I thought they played good competitive football today. And
last Sunday, Matt Eberflus again proved that he is unsuitable for coaching the Chicago Bears. He's a disaster. He has been from the start.
It's a privilege to introduce my new brother and 17th head coach of the Chicago Bears, Matt Eberflus.
To be fair, he was named head coach of the Chicago Bears in a rebuilding year. His boss, general manager Ryan Poles, was more interested in tearing down the roster, correcting the team's salary cap wrongs, and building draft capital. And As painful as that was, rational thinking leads us to believe that Poles had a viable approach to changing the course of the franchise. But Poles hired him, Matt Eberflus. And after 44 games, he has a record of 14-30. That is his. Failure to properly manage close games is his.
And Matt Eberflus is going to have to answer a lot of tough questions after this game. And that'll do it here in Indy. That's the Colts.
The Bears are 5-17 in one-score games since 2022. That is his. His coordinator and coaching choices are his.
It'll be pressure when needed, blitz when needed.
Defensive coordinator Alan Williams resigns under mysterious circumstances.
Amidst a lot of speculation regarding the absence of former Bears defensive coordinator Alan Williams, the Bears announced today that Williams has submitted his resignation.
Running backs coach David Walker was fired for workplace misconduct.
For the second time in less than 6 weeks, a Bears assistant coach is out. This time, it's running backs coach David Walker, who was relieved of his duties. Matt Eberflus says it was a joint decision among him, Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, and ownership that Walker did not uphold the standards of the organization.
Where the Bears have fired offensive coordinator Luke Getsy.
After 2 seasons, offensive coordinator Luke Getsy was fired. His replacement, Shane Waldron, quickly displayed an inability to develop game plans suitable for a rookie quarterback, and he was fired.
Do you want me to make every Chicago Bears fan's head explode? So that play that you're just seeing right there, the ball is snapped at about the 35-yard line, which means that he is going to have to try and heave the ball 75 yards to get it to the goal line, which he's not going to be able to do. They advance it almost 15 yards on that play. Matt Eberflus, the head coach of the Chicago Bears, a defensive coach, was asked afterwards about that play. This was his answer.
You're defending touchdown there, and them throwing the ball for 13 yards or 10 yards, whatever that is, doesn't really matter. It's always going to come down to that last play. And it came down to a 2-second play to the last play, and we got to execute on that one.
That's one of the 5 dumbest things I've ever heard a human being say in my entire life, in any context. It doesn't even have to be sports. If I own the team and I hear the coach say that after the game, I have serious conversations amongst people about whether he is qualified to be the head coach of a National Football League team.
The lack of accountability for coaching errors is his. This behavior has led to discontent in the locker room.
It's just a lot of things that we could be more detailed on.
I mean, it's definitely frustrating. I mean, it takes a toll on you for sure.
This is the scariest team when you're talking about these 4 because they're young.
And the once promising season of 2024 has now become a nightmare. That is his. He holds the biggest responsibility.
Williams under pressure. That is a big man chasing him. And Williams unable to get away.
And yes, players should be held accountable, and so should Ryan Poles. But the man clearly demonstrating week after week that he is clearly incapable of leading the Chicago Bears is Matt Eberflus. That's why Matt Eberflus should be fired sooner rather than later.
Wow. Well, that was enlightening. I feel great now. Your videos the last few weeks, they're incredibly well done, and they are like better than the things that you see on linear television, but they tick me off beyond all recognition. So we had to relive all of those press conferences, all of those plays. But you know what? Let's dig deeper into that. Let's dig deeper into Aldo's apparent autopsy here of the coaching career of Matt Eberflus. Danny, is it fair to blame Matt Eberflus for that missed field goal against the Packers?
Well, technically, Cairo Santos missed the field goal, so we'll blame him for missing the field goal. But the decision to not at least run and get another couple yards, and then again, Eberflus always says, or he actually said, he came back and said that he was afraid that something negative could happen. Could have been a holding call, could have been a negative run. They could have lost yards. But that's the thing; you cannot coach scared in the NFL. If you coach scared in the NFL, you coach to lose. And that's exactly what's happened with Eberflus. Going back to that Washington game, again, he was coaching scared. He thought that Daniels was gonna throw the ball 75 yards for a touchdown. Well, you know what? Defend that. You didn't defend that those 15 yards. Gave him a better shot at getting the ball to the end zone by getting the ball at the 50-yard line, and lo and behold, the game ends. So you cannot be coaching scared in the NFL, and you have to be able to manage the end of game situations. You know, we've seen before, guys, mismanagement of timeouts, mismanagement of in terms of when to challenge, when not to challenge, right? Now, some might say, well, that's someone upstairs in the booth kind of telling him what to do. But still, he's the head coach. The buck stops with him. And that record, guys, it is what it is. And we understand the first year and a half or so, they're rebuilding, they gutted their whole roster. But they were not even competing in that first year. I mean, there were times where it is you put the game on and it was over before the end of the first quarter. So I've said it before, he's a defensive coordinator masking around it as a head coach. And this is one of my biggest concerns coming into the season. And it's just played out. Unfortunately, it's played out. And my biggest concern now, and I think you guys might share this, is I don't want this to ruin Caleb Williams. I don't want it to kind of, derail his development, his growth. It's been one game, but luckily they pulled the plug. Whoever it was, I don't think it was Matt Eberflus who pulled the plug on Shane Waldron. I think it was maybe someone from above him who said, right, this guy's got to go. Anyway, at least, with Thomas Brown, it looks like they have someone who's got a competent idea in terms of how to develop a game plan. We'll see if that continues. But yeah, he's a guy that's got to go. That video, that just gave us graphics. It gave us video. It gave us quotes. It gave us, the man himself. I mean, he looked defeated after that Packers game. I mean, this is supposed to be the leader of the franchise in terms of the head coach. He looked defeated. So how's that? If I'm a player, how am I going to follow that? Right? How am I going to follow that?
Right.
There are tough losses in the NFL. Any given Sunday, any team can lose. But the leader of the team, the head coach, cannot come out and look like he did after that game.
And just to kind of piggyback off of that, yeah, I get it. The kicker needs to make the kick. The offensive line has to block. There was the possible penalty over the long snapper. All of those things can be true. But I think that when people are talking about you can't blame Eberflus or you're just piling on, no, it's a culmination of everything else that's causing that reaction. So if you're caught speeding, it's the first time you ever caught speeding, you give somebody the benefit of the doubt. If you got 15 speeding tickets and you get pulled over because you're just going 5 over the limit, you should have learned your lesson, or you should have been able to tighten things up by now. So you don't get the benefit of the doubt, because name me one big time Matt Eberflus decision that has led to a Chicago Bears victory in a big fashion. Name me one big time decision. I could be missing one, so please tell me if I'm wrong. Let me know if there's one big time coaching decision that he has made that has catapulted them to victory. This just can't keep being a coincidence that they blow the game against Denver, they blow the game against Detroit, they blow the game against the Browns, they mess up a Hail Mary, they get this kick block. It just can't just be, wow, they're just really bad. There's just what bad luck. So eventually it has to be something that has to do with the coaching on the sideline, the preparation, the realizing that you have a weak spot in the line, or taking a timeout before a Hail Mary, making sure everyone's lined up the correct way, not conceding 13 yards before a Hail Mary. Details, tiny details make the difference in all these games. That's why teams like the Chiefs are successful and teams like the Bears are not, because they do the little things correctly and the Bears don't. That's just how I see it.
You mentioned there, John. Sorry, Aldo, real quick. All those games you mentioned, they all had leads where his defense, he calls them, he coaches that defense, blew those leads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to think that there's a virus at Hallis Hall, and I'm going to name it Eberflus 3 because this is his third season. He's infecting the play of the players because they don't respect him. And when I was looking back at clips for that video piece, I went back to that introductory press conference, and Ryan Poles talked about he brought all of these qualities, and he told me he wants to build relationships with the players. Well, that's a problem. When you build relationships with the players, it has to be out of respect. Those players want to have a relationship with you because you're pushing them, because you're dragging them through all the details necessary to be a top-notch team, because you're yelling at them when they needed to be yelled. What happened at the beginning of the season? He hired a offensive coordinator who was not attentive to the details, where the players went to the offensive coordinator and said, we want to be coached, we want to be corrected. And Eberflus was allowing that to happen week after week after week until finally Herb Howard of Biggs in the press conference confronted Eberflus and said, are you going to continue to risk the rest of your career with the Chicago Bears because an offensive coordinator can't get things right? It was the best question of the entire season and might have been the question that got Eberflus to realize, yeah, maybe I need to save my own job and cover my own ass and stop being a nice guy. So yeah. I'm hopeful that Ryan Poles, I'm with Danny. If it can happen this season, I wish he's right. But if it can happen this season, it would be a remedy to the problems and not cause more problems.
Well, one of the redeeming qualities that people were bringing up about Matt Eberflus is how well the defense played at the end of the year last year when he took over play calling. And they said, wow, well, if you have a great defense, then hopefully the offense will, pick it up. And, if he can run that side of the ball, at least that's a redeeming quality. But the Bears defense allowed a touchdown, punt, interception. Then there was the end of the half. And this is the Green Bay game, by the way. Touchdown, turnover on downs, and touchdown. That's 5 out of 6 possessions deep into the Bears' territory. If your one redeeming quality is your ability to call and run a defense, is this acceptable, or is Flus potentially losing his grip on the defense as well, Danny?
Yeah, I mean that's something that's a very viable question because obviously there's injuries there, so we got to say Jaquan Briscoe's out, but the biggest injury I think is Montez Sweat. Even though he was playing, you could tell he's not 100%. I think that really has kind of led to some of the ineffectiveness of that front seven. Obviously with Billings out there as well, so I don't want to make excuses for him, but still you have to go ahead and this is the NFL. Injuries happen. You always have to come up and next man up, coach them up, and get them ready to go out there and play. And they are not generating pressure. They are not consistent in terms of stopping the run. And he's a guy that a couple years ago, same problem before they got Montez Sweat, and you saw him get a little more creative with his blitz packages, brought some design pressures. He's got to get back to that and start creating some turnovers as well. So I think that's something that we've noticed. You pointed out very, very eloquently earlier, the games that they've blown. It's all been the defense, right? And last year, everybody goes back to last year in terms of how they finished. Guys, 6 of those victories came against backup quarterbacks, so they weren't going up against the starting quarterback of those particular teams as well. So, I think a lot of that was fluff, and I think a lot of it was just maybe just some hope that we saw some positivity from that defense last year, and then that could kind of come back here, with a new offensive scheme and a quarterback and all that stuff, and that could kind of all gel. But we watched them Hard Knocks. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. There's nothing in Hard Knocks that told me this guy can motivate these players, 53 players on any given Sunday to go out there and run through a wall for them. And again, you don't have to be the rah, spitfire every damn second kind of coach, but you got to give them some motivation during the week, during practices to make these guys go out and play for you. I just don't see that from this coach.
No, I don't think they've had a real agitator like that since Ditka. Now, Lovey had a different way of motivating. I think that calm, cool, collected control of the locker room was a way that people would want to play for this guy because they respect him. I think that there's different ways to motivate. Like you said, Danny, you don't have to be a, bite the kneecap kind of guy like Dan Campbell, although I do love his style. But I think that there's different ways that you can motivate, and I just don't think he has any of those. Aldo, given the Bears' history of allowing coaches to kind of bury themselves, what would you like to see Eberflus do differently over the final 7 games? Is there anything he can do differently?
Well, I would like for him to turn over the play calling of the defense to Eric Washington so that he can take his proper place overseeing the entire team. And so perhaps some of those in-game mistakes will be remedied or will be reduced because he's paying more attention to clock management, to certain things that will help the team move, like the Washington play the sidelines as opposed to trying to prevent an 80-yard touchdown pass. So I'd like to see that. And I'd also like to comment on the whole Matt Eberflus is not to blame or is to blame regarding the Cairo Santos field goal. the thing is, and I see a lot of people in the chat saying, Hightower deserves a lot of the blame, and he does. He should have ran down the sidelines to Eberflus and said, listen, let's get the ball to the 40-yard line. We will feel a lot better. You know why? Because my kicker hits 100%. He's 36 for 36 of field goals, right, 40 yards and in. So as opposed to 81% from 40 to 50 yards, from 40 to 49 yards. That's a huge difference. We're talking 19% difference. So Hightower should have done that, or Eberflus should have been prepared with that knowledge to know he's got to get that ball to the 40. He's got to get that ball. And he's got a hot quarterback. He's got a team that is feeling blood. Instead, here's what we get, John. Let me put this up on the screen. Here's what we get. This is the last play they run before the field goal. And as you can see, there's 35 seconds on the clock. This is really, really irritating for all of us fans. So Roschon Johnson picks up 2 or 3 yards.
30 seconds left.
30 seconds left, and here we go. We're just sitting
even the
around.
announcers were saying, "What are you doing?"
Right.
Tom Brady saying, "What are you doing?"
And look at the players. I feel sorry for the players. They're sitting around like it's a commercial break.
Well, and I think a lot of the players, the pundits who were former players, are like, you got to run another play. And I forget who it was on ESPN because Tom Brady was calling this. Like, I feel like Tom Brady was going crazy inside because they weren't running another play. and it's true because, and then at the end, you see the reports about some of the Green Bay players say they know that Santos has a lower trajectory when he has those longer kicks because he needs to put it there. So they knew that they basically felt like they were going to block it. And if the Packers know that your kicker better than you do, then that's a problem because like, hey, you know what? It'd be a lot better if we got 3 or 4 or 5 more yards because we know that's going to be a low trajectory. Someone's going to get that big bear claw up there and they're going to get a piece of that. No, you feel happy with the 46-yarder, and I'm not comfortable kicking off grass, which Soldier Field doesn't exactly have pristine grass all year. Kicking outdoors, I'm not saying it was horrendous conditions. But it's not the most ideal conditions either. And you're saying, I feel happy rolling the dice with a 46-yarder. I don't like that.
And the other thing is, I was a little more surprised, besides not running another play, was why don't you, at least give the ball to Caleb, let him go run into the middle of the field and give, Cairo a straight down the middle kind of kick, and opposed, just kept it there on the left hash. And that's where the Packers players after the game were saying that they overloaded that left side because they knew that Cairo had that low trajectory on those longer kicks, and they were surprised. The Packers were saying they were surprised that the Bears didn't run another play to try and get a couple extra yards, just kind of make it a little bit easier, shorter kick, so that way it's easier, in terms of kicking mechanics. He doesn't have to do that little line drive kick to get some more oomph on the football. So if your opponent is schooling you in the media after the game, that's embarrassing. I think we saw the national clips, right? I'll put on this video. They're a laughing stock throughout the National Football League, right? That's a good point. Teams are watching the Bears and saying what not to do. Jim Harbaugh, Johnny alluded to earlier, Jim Harbaugh had the same situation versus the Bengals on Sunday Night Football and saw that, it was like they got into his field goal range, but did he try and just, take a knee or run the clock out and let's kick a kick? No, he handed the ball off. What happens? J.K. Dobbins scores touchdown and they win the game. So it's you cannot coach scared in this league. If you do, you will lose.
When you are trying to avoid the worst case scenario, you're also avoiding the best case scenario. So if you're afraid to say like, oh, we might fumble or, there might commit a penalty, we might lose yards, that first of all, you're basically admitting that I don't know if I have my team prepared enough to know what they're supposed to do, or I don't know if we're good enough to do that. And second of all, we're not going to go for the win. We're just going to, sit back and play it safe. And instead of going for the best case scenario, let's say let's just avoid the worst case scenario and let's make sure we don't fumble, which is a much lower percentage of fumbling the football than there is missing a 46-yard field goal. But it's neither here nor there. Aldo or Danny, I want to talk about the performance of Thomas Brown, the newly promoted offensive coordinator. Appeared to do a good job. Looked like Caleb was playing a little more free, not afraid to run with the football. We saw him use his legs a little bit more. What are some of the positives you saw out of that performance?
Well, it's one game, but I mean, what a night and day difference in terms of what we saw there on Sunday and what we've seen the previous Sundays, right? And we saw an offense that looked functional, looked like an NFL offense, right? We saw players, all of them engaged. We saw what I've been calling for, what we've been calling for as a show, more Caleb under center, 36% of their offensive snaps. We saw Caleb under center. We'll break into some of those plays later on in the show here as well in terms of breaking some of that stuff down. But we saw condensed formations. We didn't see any of these spread out formations. We saw an offensive line, in terms of being able to give Caleb his time. Caleb didn't have those deer in the headlights look. It looked like he had a plan. He knew what was coming. The plays came in earlier. He had at one time, I think he had like 20 seconds. In terms of he's already gotten the play. He's looking at the defense. 20 seconds before the play clock is about to expire. That rarely happened under Shimon Waldron. There's always late plays coming in late. There's timeouts because the play clock was running out. So I think we saw a couple of formation stuff early on, but that got cleaned up after the half. So we saw a functional offense, guys. And again, it's a small sample size. It's one game, but we saw confidence in the offense. We saw players looking like they know what the hell they're doing out there, right? Again, we'll get into it later on with the film clip there, but players blocking, offensive line going after guys, and that's stuff we didn't see under Shane Waldron. And I think that's what he brought here. He stuck to the running game, right? 34 rushing attempts. The first time all year, guys, where both DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson had double digits in terms of carries, right? And then you added the playmaking there of Caleb. It looked like he just kind of told him, hey, listen, 1, 2, ball's not there or play's not there, go. Use your feet and make a play with it. And Caleb was doing it. I think he had 5 design runs added to that rush total as well. So 179 yards rushing. They had time of possession, 36 minutes and change, to the Packers 23 minutes and change. That gives your defense some time to rest, time to catch their breath, and they're fresh in that second half as well. So a lot of positives I saw from Thomas Brown. I'd like to see that continue now, add some more things to that offense, but it's a great first start and a great way to go ahead and hopefully continue now on the right track, the development of Caleb Williams.
Danny, what do you think if they would have ran that option run that seemed to be working, that they were really able to gash the defense with? What if they ran that with 30 seconds left? Do you think that there would have been a catastrophe, or they would have gained some yards on that?
Even the play that they ran there earlier with Roschon, where there was a handoff and he got like 2-3 yards, get another couple of yards. Just kind of get. You never know what happens. A defensive tackle might miss a tackle or something like that, or you can get a nice block, and next thing you know, you can break something up, and there you go. The only thing I wouldn't have done is I wouldn't have throwing the football. That's the only thing I wouldn't have done. But anything else is open. Just run, get the ball, get a couple of 2-3 yards. Like I said, just help the offense at all. But any running attempt there would have been a positive play in my opinion.
You got the great analysis there, Danny. Aldo, any impressive stats as compared to what we have been seeing from the offense?
Yeah, well, for the season under Waldron, the team was at just hitting 30% on third down conversions. On Sunday, the team had 56% third down conversions, so that's a great sign. And then on the few that they missed on third down, they went 3 for 3 on fourth down plays. So that is incredible. They had 391 yards of total offense. It was a very healthy and robust offense. And the analytic that I like best is the one that Danny shared about the time of possession, particularly since this defense. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the defense, but the defense is starting to worry me too, because I think those players who hear Eberflus most than anyone are starting to maybe tune him out, and the hustle isn't there, and we're not getting the same type of defensive play that we saw earlier in the season, and certainly that we saw late last season. Now, of course, that could be Billings, but nonetheless, getting back to Thomas Brown, very impressive start for him as the offensive coordinator. And I think, that he's going to come up with some clever stuff against Brian Flores and that blitzing Vikings defense, getting rid of the ball really quick and some creative ways for Caleb Williams. I really love that one wide receiver screen to DJ Moore early in the game. I think it was in the first series, and they threw a wide receiver screen to him. It was perfectly blocked. Williams had that ball for probably a nanosecond in his hands. He caught it and fired it, and the blocking was great downfield. And DJ got a nice 14-yard run out of there.
Another good stat, Aldo, was they only gave up 3 sacks the entire game to a defense that was hunting and getting the quarterback. And 2 of those sacks came on that last drive where Caleb looked like he was holding on to the ball a little long, but he was able to recover and get that first down to those big throws to Roma Dunze. So the offensive line played better because Caleb was instructed, 1, to get rid of the football or run with it. And then that avoided a lot of the pressure as well. So, and I think also in generally, when we'll go, again, we'll get into a table here later on, some of the pass blocking was much better. And don't forget, they came in. I know they got their tackles back, but they lost. Tevin Jenkins wasn't starting; he was inactive, and his replacement, Bates, got a concussion in the first quarter, and they put in their third string offensive lineman, Curran, the number 73. He played left guard, and for the most part, you didn't hear his name, so that tells you he had a solid game there as well. So that stuff. Again, it's all from the coordination. There's a plan. There was, you saw the shots of Thomas Brown up in the booth, calm, cool, collective. Unlike freaking Shane Waldron,
until he scored, and then he was all right.
He's looking at his play sheet. He looked like he's confused as well. But Thomas Brown had everything under control. Like I said, and that's why last week when the national media was kind of ragging Thomas Brown for what happened last year with the Carolina. Again, I understand it's one game, but Thomas Brown last year was put in a bad situation with a Carolina team that had a rookie quarterback that was in over his head, an offense that had no talent whatsoever around it. And I think that was kind of harped on him, and that kind of looked bad on him. But this guy is a highly decorated or highly recognized in terms of the coaching circles. And this is the guy that I believe, hopefully, will continue to get better. And I just want him to now see, move forward, I want to see him to continue to build that game plan around Caleb, and I want to see Caleb continue to take those steps up and get better each and every week.
Yeah, and he was calm, cool, collected until the Bears scored, and then he was pounding his chest. He stood up, which I love to see. He was showing emotion. He was jazzed up, which that was a part that I love to see. And for me, because I don't have the analytical eye that you do, Danny, but I think that whenever I watched Caleb Williams play last week, you can tell when it just seems like a guy got an anvil off his shoulders and is just able to play quarterback a little bit more. Maybe there's no real analytical way to putting that out, but you just looked like he was playing more free, like he was more comfortable while he was playing. And whether that's just because he has a better relationship with Brown, or the calls are better, the scheme was better, I don't know, but I can tell you that he just looked like he was playing just more free, like he was just more comfortable back there. But
I feel like the whole offense had confidence in the play caller. They had confidence in a man who's going to have a plan for them. He laid it out to them in the beginning of the week. One thing that was kind of reported last week that I kind of caught last minute was, Shane Waldron never had a team meeting with the offense in one room. He would have separate meetings. So quarterbacks in their own room, running backs in their own room, offensive line. Thomas Brown, one of the first things he said is in a raw meeting as a team. When we break this tape down, when I show flops, when I show guys not giving effort, the entire unit's gonna watch this. And that's one thing that's the way I grew up knowing football, and that's how we broke down tape as a unit, right? Defense, offense, so on and so forth, and eventually the whole team. But that's something that was like, are you serious? This is how this guy coached this offensive unit. So I think that kind of brought some of that camaraderie as well. And again, you saw an offense that had some vigor to them, some players that feel like, oh my God, the entire offense felt like they had a big monkey lifted off their shoulder, a big elephant lifted off their shoulders, if you will. And they were out there confident. And even that 4th and 3 early on in the game, Caleb went to, I don't know if he was yelling I'm assuming he's yelling at Eberflus saying, let's go for it. Let's go for it. Because he was confident. He knew he was, and they went for it and they got it. So again, that's him showing leadership, and again, him playing with more confidence, and it was evident throughout the football game.
Well, now that you're on the topic of him, Caleb Williams' play, Danny, it sounds like you said he's getting back on track. I believe you have a few clips of Caleb playing under center here.
Yeah, the one thing I've been harping on, John, and we've been talking about here is you got to help the rookie quarterback. You can't put everything on him. Week 2 versus Houston, 52 pass attempts in the second career start. That's just too much. And how you protect him is you rely on a rushing attack. Everything starts up front with the run game, and you allow Caleb to just kind of be like a point guard out there and give the ball to his playmaker. Let them go ahead and make the plays. And the one thing I've really been harping on is it all starts up front with Caleb under center and utilizing the play action, because what it does is it helps open up things down the football field. And I picked up 5 plays here. The first one here is going to be in the first quarter here, 2nd and 8. And we see here, again, look at the linebackers, right? There was Caleb's under center. The first step the linebacker does is they just kind of freeze in their spots there, maybe take a half a step coming up forward, and then Caleb kind of drops back, looks and sees that he's a green helmet kind of flash in front of him, feels like there's pressure, goes in and escapes. But yet there are plans here for him to get rid of the football. You'll see DJ Moore coming up open here in the seam here. You'll see Gerald Everett on the outside where Caleb, if he wanted to, could have just dumped it off to Everett there. But instead, he kept the ball and ran it and got 8 yards, I believe it was, 7 yards for a positive play. Okay, that was a positive play. But again, it all started with him under center. The second play here, it's again in the first quarter, 2nd and 8. Again, we're going to see here 21 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 running back. I love that. A tight formation. He brought everything in. Play fake here. Goes ahead and he runs. Okay, this is the replay of the previous play. It looks like. So basically, but the one thing there I have to criticize Caleb here is that he's got to sell that play fake better than he just does there. Because if he does a better job of play faking it, I think those linebackers stick to their spots for a longer period of time, gives them a better option to go get rid of the football. So that's a first play. The second play we're going to look at here is also in the first quarter, 2nd and 8. And this play was nullified, but 21%, I love that. With tight formation, bring everybody in. And here, again, we see his pocket presence, right? We see that he feels that outside pressure. And this is why I keep saying Caleb with inside interior offensive lineman is important for him, because he feels that pocket pressure. He goes ahead and he steps up and throws a nice ball to Keenan Allen, puts it in a spot where only Keenan Allen can get to that football. But again, what I want to notify here is if we run that play again, if we can, if not, that's okay, Aldo. But when you do the play action, you freeze that second level defender. And that gives your player, whether it's a split second or a full second, it gives your player some time to go out and get open there. So again, we see one-on-one coverage on the outside with Keenan Allen. Those second level linebackers, when that play fake was a better play fake than the first play we showed, kind of froze those linebackers. They took at least one step coming forward. Didn't go after, right away, didn't drop back in motion until they recognize, oh, this is a pass play. Damn, there you go. You have a completion here. So again, this is why I like seeing Caleb under center. Now, I understand why they do the shotgun stuff. A lot of these young quarterbacks, they like being in shotgun because, as you see here, when you go under center, the quarterback turns his back to the defense for that split second where he's doing the play fake or whatnot. And then, as opposed to the shotgun where he's constantly looking at the quarterback. But I think constantly looking at the defense. What he does here with the play action is, again, that's those second level linebackers. It freezes them or it brings them up a step or two. And that split second gives you so much ample opportunity to make plays. This is that second play here again. Again, this is nullified because of an illegal formation there. But I love the fact that he just stepped back, saw that one-on-one coverage on the outside, stepped up in the pocket. Again, that nice pocket formation there. We'll talk about the offensive line already, right? Making some good blocks, giving Caleb some time. I love the fact he stepped up, nice accurate throw to the outside. This third play, again, this is late in the first quarter, 2nd and 8. This is where we see here again the tight formation we talked about earlier. And what does I mean by tight formation? Everyone's logged in. Everyone's close here to the line of scrimmage. It gives you a great opportunity to go here to either run or pass the ball. And then when you have a tight formation, it's harder for them to decipher before pre-snap. This is going to be a play. Is going to be a pass play or is going to be a run play, because these all look like possible run plays as well. And this is something that the Lions, Ben Johnson, does a great job of. A lot of their pass plays, pass sets are coming out of run formations. This is here. There's a toss sweep here to DeAndre Swift, and this is where the one where he goes for a touchdown. But I just want to show some blocking. I talked about the whole offense being engaged, John. Look at here. We have Cole Kmet and Roma Dunze. They'll go and seal the edge there with their pin blocks there, the wham blocks. And now Braxton Jones gets out in front. All right, along with Keenan Allen to kind of set up that lane there for DeAndre Swift, and he takes it all the way to the house. So the whole offense, when I say the whole offense is engaged, look at Keenan Allen here, block guys. We haven't seen this kind of effort from Keenan Allen in terms of blocking the entire season. And that's what I'm talking about. The entire offense was engaged, was energized this game, and they came out and they are ready to play. And again, Braxton Jones here, I know there's a lot of back and forth in terms of, is he the guy of the future or not? This is what the Bears love about him, the athletic ability. It goes and pancakes that guy. And now look, he's actually almost step for step running with DeAndre Swift down the football field for a 300-plus man. That's impressive. So those are things that he flashes on tape that the Bears actually love about this kid. So, but the whole thing I want to show here with that, with Caleb under center is because of that play action. If he sells it, does a good job of it. Not only do you free second level linebackers, you also now give yourself a chance to bust off long runs like that. Or you can go ahead and build your game off of that passing ability, or those run formations. The one thing that I will like to see more that I didn't see in this game, I want to see more rollouts. I want to see more Caleb get on a roll, get outside, give him some more half field reads. I also want to see a couple of deep plays, right? Deep balls. And I know Caleb struggled so far with his accuracy on deep throws on a football field, but you got to be able to challenge the defense. You can't just, not say, all right, we're not going to throw it down the football field. Give me 2 or 3 plays. You have Roman Dunze, who a guy who can go up and make a play on a football, even if it's a contested throw. We saw on that back shoulder play, right, where it was a 4th and 3, back shoulder throw, 21 yards. Rome does a great job of adjusting body control to get to the football and makes the catch. Those are the kind of plays I want to see a little bit more of here with Thomas Brown. Now, Aldo made a great point in terms of, the Vikings coming in with Brian Flores. They're a more exotic defense. He's going to bring defensive blitzes from anywhere, everywhere. So this is where I want to see Thomas Brown be a little more careful, and Caleb's got to be more on his game there. We saw that the first sack they gave up, it was on a play action where he turned his back, and someone either that was Caleb's guy, or it was an offensive lineman or a running back missed a block. But that defender came scot-free, and he nailed Caleb from his blind side. So that's got to be something you got to be careful of. But again, I love the fact that the whole offense was engaged. We saw a lot, offensive linemen getting out, pulling, getting out front, running down a football field with DeAndre Swift. We saw guys getting to that 2nd and 3rd level defenders. Stuff we hadn't seen all year. Keenan Allen threw a great block, guys. How many times did we saw Keenan Allen on those wide receiver screens just kind of blow off his blocking or look like he didn't know who to block? So that's the thing, is it's one game. I don't want to get too high or out in front of my skis here, go too overexcited. But we saw a competent NFL offense. Now, 19 points is not enough. You want to see more points on the scoreboard. But for a team that had not scored in 25 drives, in terms of touchdowns, they scored 2 offensive touchdowns under Thomas Brown, and he didn't even have a whole week to go in and put this game plan together. He was given the job, Wednesday? So half the week to put this game plan together. So now you give this guy more opportunity to kind of go ahead, and now he showed, to the players, say, this is what I can do. Now, this week is going to be important in terms of how he handles Brian Flores. I want to see what his plan is here for the Vikings defense and what he does. But if he can put points on Brian Flores and continue to kind of make Caleb look good, I'm telling you, this guy has a chance to stick around here for a long time.
And Aldo, I wanted you to get your opinion on Caleb, some of his stats, and what your analysis was on him.
Well, I noticed back before when we were previewing the Commanders game, I put together the stats of Jaden Daniels alongside of Caleb Williams, and I noticed that Jaden Daniels' rushing attempts were more than twice the amount of Caleb Williams. And Caleb has said, I don't want to run, I want to pass. But I do think that it's important for a young quarterback who has the ability to run to utilize that ability to run. I think it helps young quarterbacks get into the league. I'm not asking them to look to run first, but I'm asking Caleb Williams, run as soon as your 2nd or 3rd read is you've determined that it's done. And that's what he did in this game with the 9 rushes that he had. He said after the game, I didn't come into the game ready to run. Although the word is that Thomas Brown did tell him that he should run more often than Shane Waldron was pushing for that. And so here's a guy, offensive coordinator, Thomas Brown, knows what his strengths are of his young quarterbacks, knows where he still needs time to work out on certain things, and he called the perfect game plan. So I hope that this Sunday against the Vikings, we're going to see Caleb utilize his legs more, take advantage of the outside blitz and go up the middle and pick up yards. Help the running game. I think that's a kind of a win-win for the team and for Caleb Williams as well.
A couple of things on that, although I want to piggyback real quick on that, is Thomas Brown's up in the booth. All right. And he sees his advantage. He sees what defense is doing. He knows, he sees it in terms of the tendencies, in terms of what they might do. And I remember, because the play call is in so early, that microphone turns off, I believe it's 15 seconds on a play clock. Right. Caleb at times was there with 20 seconds. He's got the play. He's ready to go. And Thomas Brown is telling him in his ear, hey, it looks like they might be playing some man coverage here. If you don't see your 1st, 2nd guy, go and take off because they're going to have the backs turned to you. So I think that's also because that's what Sean McVay did. Remember with Jared Goff, that was a big thing where he coached him up that first year with the Rams, where he was in his ear till about that 15-second mark, telling him, hey, this is what I see. Look for this, look for that. Wow. This could be something that Thomas Brown might be doing to Caleb, saying, right, look, they're in this man coverage. If you don't see your first guy open, go, run, take the ball and get whatever you can. That could also be something we could maybe keep an eye on for future games as well.
Indeed.
And Danny, you referenced the offensive line play. It looked improved against the Packers. We saw that great block that Braxton Jones had on DeAndre Swift's touchdown. But he was bull rushed into Caleb Williams on the final possession. Look, he's in year 3. And there's a lot of questions of whether or not he should be the left tackle of the future. And let me just put in this note that when I saw that block from Braxton Jones, I actually stood up and I fist pumped. It was I love seeing that. And the fact he had probably had so much adrenaline after that block that, like you said, Denny, he was running step for step with Swift all the way in. I absolutely love that. I love the intensity. I love the physicality. Is that enough to say, okay, that's going to be your guy for the next 10 years? I'm not so sure. I just think that there's still a lot of questions where if you have a high draft pick and there's a left tackle that you think might be able to be your guy for the next 5, 10, I should hopefully more than 5, but 10 years, then maybe you do take that option rather than just saying, okay, we're going to stick with Braxton Jones and see what we got there. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, there are positives with Braxton Jones, but and again, there are negatives, right? And still, you talked about it, the bull rush that still gets him. And again, he was coming off a week of injury. He didn't play the previous week, so I mean, it was his first game back. But again, there was times where he gave up sacks. But this is what I keep going back and saying: watching Caleb and the fact that he's got that pocket presence when the pressure comes from the outside to step up in the pocket. I feel like, guys, that building that inside the center and the 2 guards and fortifying that inside, giving Caleb the ability to step up in the pocket and get away from that outside pressure, allowing Braxton or Darnell Wright to go and kind of walk or escort their defensive ends up the field, if you will, have them step up and now make plays on the football field. I think, solidifying that inside, putting money on the inside, the center and the 2 guards is where I would go. And I could live with Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright at least for another year and see how it happens. And also, I'm looking at Amadaji in terms of that 3rd-round pick and see how he develops here coming into next year, hopefully fully healthy off of that quad injury. So we have some options there at left tackle, but I got to be encouraged in terms of what the entire offensive line did, especially with coming in without Tevin Jenkins, losing Bates early in the first quarter, putting your 3rd-string guard back in there, and basically having a solid game overall. So a lot of that was, hey, there was a plan with Thomas Brown. There was also an emphasis with Caleb to get rid of football quickly. Take some of that check down, take some of those easy throws. I think that has to continue, especially this week versus the Minnesota defense that's going to be exotic, and they're going to be coming from all different sides, all angles. This is the game that scares me in terms of Caleb, in terms of making sure he protects himself. Right, with Thomas Brown, I have a little bit more confidence that he'll do a better job of protecting him. With Waldron, I'd be like, hey, just sit Caleb for this game. Let's put in Tyson Bagent and see what happens, because I mean that's how bad these guys scare me in terms of how they come from every different angle.
Real quick, we're going to get to all of the chat room questions here later on, but I do, because this question came up as we were talking about Braxton Jones, is from your right. Could Braxton play guard next year if they go for a left tackle? Is that something he's familiar with, or he would have the ability to be kicked inside?
He's been a predominant tackle throughout his career. He played that at college, and he's played that in the NFL. Could he play left guard? Sure, I could see him play left guard, but in terms of where he's played, predominantly he's been a left tackle.
Yeah, when I spoke with Greg Gabriel about it on Monday, he said, well, the problem with Braxton is that if you move him to guard, there's a lot of bull rush work going on at the guard position. So if you can't handle it as a tackle, maybe it's just best to leave him out there, because you can game plan around that with chips and getting rid of the ball quickly. So we'd have to see him. At this point, I'm more interested to see if he can play right tackle, so that way he can, in the near future, move to that swing tackle position like Cliff Victoria mentioned. He could be a very valuable piece at the swing tackle position.
Yeah, I think that's the sentiment in the chat room. That's not the first person that said that he could be a great depth piece. I think that was King in there said that he could be a good depth piece, and I think he could. But they'd have to re-sign him, and that would be another team saying, "Hey, we're going to overpay because we need a starting tackle," and this guy has plenty. The whole Leno experience, where it's like best ability is availability, and this guy's been able to play, so we're gonna go sign him to be our starter, and then all of a sudden you're not gonna overpay for Braxton Jones if you only see him as a depth piece.
That's a great comp, Leno. Remember, although you and I defended Leno so much, was like, yeah, he's not great, he's not gonna be an all-pro, but he's there every week. He's a guy that's serviceable. I think Braxton Jones is better than Charles Leno. I'm curious to see what you think in terms of overall play.
I think that he's much more athletic than Leno, and so much more suited for this offense. Now, Leno was a little bit better with the bull rush, but I think Leno would have these concentration lapses and get his technique all screwed up, which you can say that about Braxton too. In fact, after the game, when he was asked about that bull rush in that final series, he said it's all about technique, and I didn't get my technique right. And so when you don't get your technique, Danny, I'll ask you. Usually that's because of concentration. Let's go back.
Yeah. Basically, when you get bull rush like that, basically you open up your chest. You didn't strike your hands out, quick enough to be able to kind of offset that power initially hit your chest, and then you walk you back. So and he's not his lower half is not a thick, powerful lower half. It's still kind of light. That's why you see how athletic he is to be able to get down the football field and run and keep pace with DeAndre Swift. So I think that's where his problem lies. There is he's got to get stronger in that core, and he's got to be able to strike his hands and be able to protect his chest to avoid getting bull rushed like that.
And if I can add one more thought, the left tackle position, there just aren't enough of them. And that's why when you look at a Braxton Jones and you look at a Charles Leno, you can safely say he is in that average rank. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs and the problems they're having this season at their tackle position. They would probably love to have Braxton Jones on the team. And and so you got to keep that in mind because that position has become a rare species in the National Football League. Colleges are not turning them out like they used to back in the day.
Yeah, Trent Williams don't grow on trees, guys.
No. And this whole Leno talk got me thinking about a couple years ago. My brother thought it would be hilarious for my birthday to get me an 8x10 of Charles Leno, autographed, by the way. But the picture was him making a tackle that obviously came after an interception. So I don't even know why he signed that picture, because it's
really.
So like, oh yeah, that's me after we threw a pick. Let me, or maybe that's his one career tackle. But I have a picture of Leno making a tackle after an interception, autographed for whatever reason. So I'm not sure what that's.
Hey, he didn't throw the pick.
You're right. Yeah,
that's right.
Picked up a tackle. But I want to stick with the offense. This is kind of related. And I want to talk about Rumodunze because Aldo, do you think that he's beginning to prove that he was? Because a lot of people are saying, why don't they go to the line? Why didn't they draft the lineman? Is he starting to prove that he was the correct pick in the draft and not going after the line early in the draft?
Well, I can't say that because the offensive line is in such disarray. It does seem like perhaps Poles, it all depends on the board. If he had a comparable player, if he had Rumodunze's score at 6.0 and there was an offensive tackle or guard at a 5.9, he probably should have gone with the lineman because that's the way you should traditionally build a football team with an offensive line that is a wall. But having said that, I do believe that there is this connection brewing between Rome and Caleb that could last for 10, 12, 15 years here with Chicago. And so I like it. I liked the player before the draft. When Danny first brought him to my attention, I said, whoa, this guy's 6'3" and he can run. Is he Calvin Johnson? And he could potentially be, a Megatron light. I don't know. What do you think, Danny?
No, he was the right pick, guys. And I know that the screen for offensive linemen, trust me, is out there. But, remember, Joe Alt was already gone, number 5. J.C. Latham, the second tackle, was already gone, number 7. So, and then for me, Rumodunze was a top 3 player in the entire draft. It was Marvin Harrison, Rumodunze, and then Caleb Williams. So that's how I had him ranked coming into this draft class. So I'm high on Rumodunze. I think the combination of Waldron being the offensive coordinator, play caller, the issue with the offensive line and blocking. And I think some of the early injuries he had, I think kind of slowed him down, but he's got 479 yards. He's on pace to get to almost 1,000 yards here if he continues, and having games like he's had this past week. So, I think my thing is, I think the addition of Keenan Allen has kind of kind of retarded his progress. Because I think Keenan Allen, being the veteran, being the guy that they brought in here, I think he gets, I guess, dibs, if you will, prior to Rome. But I think, if you make Rome a key, a target, a key, if you game plan, you put him, plays for him, I think you're going to see him continue to be able to go and make plays. He runs terrific routes. A lot of times you go through some of these, these all 22 recaps, and you see Rome is wide open. He's creating separation from these NFL cornerbacks. It just, unfortunately, Caleb hasn't gotten the ball to him because of a timing or offensive line, whatever it is, misses him, whatever. But he's a guy that we saw on that fourth down play, can make clutch plays down the football field. He's a guy with terrific body control, can extend away from his frame and bring in those tough catches. That's what I'm saying. Like, at least once or twice a game, give him a shot deep, throw it up there and just let him go up there and make a play on the football. So, he's a guy that's going to continue to get better and better as time goes on. And although you hit it, I think him and Caleb, that connection they have, I think it's going to continue to get better and better and better as the years go on. And I think, to me, in my opinion, it's been a combination of other things, but mainly Keenan Allen's presence, I think, has kind of slowed down the development of Rome Odunze, in my opinion.
John, let me ask you this question, because Danny brings up the point about Keenan Allen perhaps retarding Rome's progress, or definitely taking targets away from him. And I agree with that. Do you think, you asked a question about Rome, perhaps not being chosen and an offensive line being chosen. What about Keenan Allen? Should we have signed Keenan Allen, even if it's a one-year contract that, $18 million he's making? That could have been forwarded to a better offensive lineman than the ones that he acquired in the offseason.
Yeah, I think when you look at it at the time of the deal, I'm not going to pretend like I wasn't excited about it. I think everybody was excited about it. They were able to pull off a trade for Keenan Allen, and all of a sudden you have Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore. But when you look at what the production is, and not only are you paying him, but you had to give up compensation for him, you're thinking, why is this guy not more involved? Yes, he is banged up, but Keenan Allen had a history of being banged up. But for the production you're getting out of him, you wish you would have been able to reallocate those resources a little bit, whether it's the financial of what you're paying him or the fact that you had to give up a fourth round pick to it. So unless he comes on strong and really finishes the year highly productive, or this gives them the inside track of getting him at a big discount next year, which I'm not even sure he comes back next year to the Chicago Bears. So this might be one of those trades where it's a sunken cost. You gave a fourth round pick up for it. Not as bad as the Chase Claypool trade, I guess, just because of the compensation they gave up for it. But you got to say that Ryan Poles takes swings at wide receivers, I guess.
He does, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I want to switch sides of the ball real quick, because something that has been talked about is the fact that the Bears are still rotating Tyreek Stevenson and Terrell Smith. Danny, what's your take on that? They're working Smith in a little bit more? Do they see him as a guy that could potentially start opposite Jalen Johnson, or what do you think that is that? I know that Stevenson has had some issues throughout this year, most notably what came on the Hail Mary. So, what do you think the strategy is rotating Smith in there?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that the whole thing with Washington, I think that's kind of played on with Stevenson there. That might have kind of messed with his mindset, if you will. But also Terrell Smith was dealing with a hip injury coming out of training camp, so he wasn't prepared or wasn't healthy to play the first handful of weeks. And Aldo, you might remember, I was higher on Terrell Smith coming out of college than I was on Tyreek Stevenson. So I absolutely love Terrell Smith, and I think he's a guy that can potentially start opposite of Jalen Johnson. The fact that they're rotating him in, I'm not sure what's going on there. I mean, Tyreek Stevenson did come on towards the end of the last year, and obviously he's a guy that plays with that swagger, plays with that that chip on his shoulder kind of thing, and plays with some physicality. Gets a little bit over, carried away, could draw a penalty here and there. But I just feel like after that Washington game and how everyone came down on him, Stevenson, that is, with the fans and with the social media and the national media and possibly even some of his teammates, I think that's kind of dimmed his light a little bit. And I think he might be battling a little bit of a confidence issue there as well. So I think they're kind of rotating Smith here, taking an opportunity to see a healthy Terrell Smith go in and make a play. He didn't have any tackles, but I think he had a pass breakup, and he also had an interception, obviously, in the red zone versus Jordan Love. So I think he's a guy that, as long as you're rotating these guys in, the unfortunate part is neither one of them is quick enough and agile enough to play inside that slot. So you're going to have to kick them out to the outside and split some of that time. So That the rotation did surprise me a little bit. So the only thing I can think of, John, is the fact that Smith has been coming on, playing better since he got healthier. And the Stevenson thing is, his confidence might be shaken a little bit after what happened in Washington.
And Aldo, I want to stick with the defense, but I wanted to move the line because I thought this was a very interesting thought you put here in the rundown. Montez Sweat hasn't had a sack since that Washington Hail Mary game. He is playing hurt. He has a bad shin, but should we be concerned that Montez Sweat could be another one of those Khalil Mack situations where you come into Chicago and you're playing like a monster, and then all of a sudden things start fading back a little bit and your production goes down and the injuries increase? And so what's your take on Montez Sweat?
Yeah, and I'm really interested in getting Danny's opinion on this because I think the way Montez Sweat is playing now is pretty much the norm of how he played at Washington. And remember, he played alongside a really stupendous defensive end, and so they had these two great defensive ends, but Montez never got double-digit sacks. And so that may not be who he is. He may not be the sack monster that we all want. And his strength is supplementing the pass rush and being stout at the point of attack and doing little things. And of course, the fact that he's not playing with two healthy wheels is probably why his sack total has diminished a little bit, but I used that clip of him being interviewed after the game, and he just sounded so down and out. And I'm hoping that that's not being translated to the football field, that he is not let the emotions of playing for the Chicago Bears and under now a lame duck coach affect him. And remember also when he was on that podcast with Chris Long, where he said that we're going to beat the Packers twice. So maybe that led to his dejection in the locker room because, of course, they did not beat the Packers. And hopefully, they'll do it in Green Bay, but don't bet on it.
Yeah, Danny, what's your talk on Sweat?
For me, first and foremost, I do believe that shin is bothering him. I think that's kind of given him some issues there in terms of get off and be able to kind of close and play. I mean, remember he missed a game, I believe it was because of that shin as well. So, and the other thing is, we kind of forget the Andrew Billings effect of this as well. He was a guy. His stats might not be glaring or pop out on the stat sheet, but he's a guy that consistently was getting inside, was beating those single blockers. He was getting inside, drawing some double teams, and that allowed Gervon Dexter to get his 4 sacks. When was the last time we heard Gervon Dexter get a sack, right? And then that also kind of go into effect there with Montez Sweat as well. So remember, it's an entire defensive front. One helps the other, but that interior push from Billings and Dexter was giving Montez Sweat some ability to get out there. So I think it's a combination of the injury and the fact that Billings is gone there. I think that also has kind of slowed him down. Now, Zach Pickens, the 3rd round pick from South Carolina, is going to have to come up and pick up the pace here. He's been playing now, getting healthy. I saw him make a couple of nice pass rush moves in this past game, so hopefully he picks up the pace there as well. And opposite, you talked about all they said, in terms of what he had at Washington. Darrell Taylor had 2 sacks in the first week. I was out here praising him, saying this could be a steal for the Bears, and he's been quiet ever since then. So the other guy, Jacob Martin, actually came in and it's already had 2 sacks since he got activated off the injured reserve. So let's see what Martin can do. Austin Booker, the rookie, he's also kind of learning. He's also a guy that needs some more time development and all that stuff. But if we can get some consistent pressure from the inside and opposite, I think that's going to open up things for Montez Sweat as well as once he gets healthy.
Excellent stuff, guys. Well, it's time to go into some of the chat room questions. And I'm going to start with this one about Caleb Williams and Thomas Brown. It gets from 3.5 Houston. Why Caleb did not talk to Brown much before Waldron was fired? Danny, what do you think the communication was between Caleb maybe not talking to Brown and just be more with Waldron? What do you think that dynamic was beforehand?
Well, obviously anything I would say right now is more of a guess on my part because I wasn't in those meeting rooms. But the one thing that you could tell is Waldron was the offensive coordinator. He's the head of that offense. He calls the plays and all that. Thomas Brown was the passing game coordinator, which to my experience in the past, it's basically what they do is they assign these pass plays, and then he sits with Caleb and says, all right, which pass play do you like? And then he gives them to Waldron. Waldron puts them in the game plan. That's how it was put together in terms of does Thomas Brown have anything to say during the weeks when Waldron was the offensive coordinator? I don't believe Thomas Brown had anything to do. I think his work was Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday, whatever you want to say, helping put that game plan together with Shane Waldron, and then from then on it was Shane Waldron and Caleb Williams. Because remember, one of the things last year that we heard out of Carolina with Bryce Young was there are so many people in Bryce Young's ears, whether it's with Josh McCown, the quarterback coach, and Frank Reich, the head coach, and then Thomas Brown was a passing game coordinator, and so on and so forth. So you don't want to have all these voices in the quarterback's head, especially a rookie whose head is already spinning the first couple of weeks. So I think they had the operation where Simo put in the run plays, Thomas Brown designed put in the passing plays, and then that was given to Waldron. He was the guy with Caleb to doing that. Now it's been flipped. Now it's Caleb and Thomas Brown sitting down and saying, all right, what are the plays you feel comfortable with? What do you want to do? This is how I want to attack this defense. Which plays here are you comfortable with? And I think then now you bring in Chris Morgan. He gives his run play, package or whatever. And then now they put the game plan together. So I think now, I obviously think that Thomas Brown and Caleb Williams have a better relationship than Caleb Williams and Shane Waldron did. I have nothing to back it up, but just from looking at the way he interacted with Thomas Brown, it just seems like he just has a better relationship with him. So we'll see how hopefully that continues going forward. But again, now the main thing I'm focusing on is how is Thomas Brown going to give Caleb or put Caleb in a spot where he's going to succeed and hopefully protect himself.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that Kerry Joseph is the quarterback's coach. So they're the ones that are having robust dialogue, meeting every day, talking every day, and so forth. And as Danny said, you don't want too many voices in his ear. So Brown's job was to come up with a game plan for the passes. He's scouting the next opponent. He would be doing that all of Monday and Tuesday, and then and Tuesday when they put the plan in, he probably started looking at tape of the next week's opponent. So, that's probably the way that was constructed at Hallis Hall, which isn't out of the ordinary.
And while we're on the topic of coaches, let's go to a question from Route Love that says, and I'm going to go to Aldo, so you're our senior Bears fan on this show. Do you guys really trust this organization to pick the right coach?
Sorry. The wrong one.
Yeah, it's like, you really trust this organization to pick the right coach when they fire Eberflus?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't think anyone here is going to disagree with what I'm going to say. Absolutely not. And the problem is that under George McCaskey, there is this shyness about having a big personality head coach. After Mike Ditka, every single head coach hired is much more demure. And I'm not saying, Lovie Smith wasn't tough or John Fox wasn't tough or anything like that, but they were not big personalities. There were guys who, really are kind of cookie cutters in terms of how they deal with the media, in terms of how they deal with players and so forth. And so, I think it was Danny was talking about Harbaugh and bringing Harbaugh in. Yeah, I give. I was against the idea, but I give. We need somebody to come in here and pays attention to the details, challenges players, be their friends, but out of respect. And I think it's the McCaskey family that perhaps is laying out the blueprint for who they want as a head coach, and then allowing the general manager to choose in that narrow lane, so to speak.
I agree with Aldo 100%. That's 100% accurate. And that's the thing with since Ditka, they don't want that big personality to kind of that was a quote unquote the face of the organization. And again, I think I saw the previous question about John Gruden. John Gruden's a big personality, right? And that's a guy that I don't think that McCaskey is going to want to touch, right? If they didn't go get Jim Harbaugh, who played for them, right? Who's a successful coach. They didn't go get him. And now the monetary thing is one thing, right? We can talk about that. But just they didn't go get that guy. I didn't even want to talk to him. They're not going to go get a guy like Gruden, who's already got some stuff going on with I don't know if that's all cleared up in terms of what happened and how he got fired with the Raiders. We'll see how that goes. But they're not going to get these big personalities. They want these guys that are nice guys, right? Think about it, right? Dick Duran, nice guy. Lovie Smith, nice guy. Mark Trestman, nice guy. Weird, but nice guy. Matt Nagy, nice guy. Eberflus, nice guy. These are the guys that they want to bring in because these are nice guys, and they're gonna go good in the community. They're gonna go and do the Bears charity work and all that stuff, and not not dropping an F-bomb or anything like that. So that's what there is. And if they actually give this, give full control, whether it's Kevin Warren or if Ryan Poles is back, and say, go get the best head coach. And then that person says, well, this is my head coach, and that fails now, then they're both gone. But I truly believe, like with Aldo, that they will not ever give to a big personality at head coach.
I mean, and that would be someone potentially like Mike Vrabel, who is going to come in with a rugged edge, and because he butted heads with his GM whenever they traded AJ Brown, and he was disagreeing with his GM a lot. Now, listen, I understand that you might want to go offense when it comes to the head coach, and I think I read on the internet today that Lincoln Riley's agent is Trace Armstrong. So, we'll see.
You talked about them having a Rolodex. You're right. They have a Rolodex that find these old GMs like Bill Polian and Ernie Accorsi. They pull them off from the trip and say, all right, find me a GM and head coach. But I mean, if they go and they call Trace Armstrong, might be their Rolodex now. He might be their new age Rolodex, because unless Trace Armstrong represents the guy, he's not gonna get a job here. So I hope that's not the case. But we're quickly on Vrabel. I think he's a strong personality within the locker room. He's not a guy that's going to make waves outside the locker room, right? Sure. Like a Harbaugh or a Gruden or some of these other guys, right? So I think Vrabel, again, I'm with you, John. I prefer an offensive-minded head coach that's going to groom Caleb Williams for the going to the future. But if you get a great head coach, okay, and he hires a great staff, you can always do that. You can always make it work, right? So that's why Vrabel was on my list last week when we were talking about possible replacements. Aaron Glenn from Detroit is also a guy that's on my list, defensive coordinator from what he's done with the Lions. But again, he's going to have to prove it to me in terms of who he's going to bring in as a staff and all that stuff. So the main thing is Caleb, developing him and getting someone that's going to be able to potentially get to his potential in terms of being great moving forward.
All right, I'm gonna bring up this question real quick by Visit Joe. What would Thomas Brown have to accomplish to get a serious look as the Bears head coach, or is it not enough time in games? I'm gonna hold off on that simply because it rolls perfectly into our new favorite game. It is time to play Buy, Sell, or...
This is moronic!
Oh, we're getting that timing down real nice, Aldo. Pulling double duty, hosting and pulling the gears. It was pretty evident that Thomas Brown won over a lot of Bears fans at his introductory press conference last Wednesday. He said the right things, displayed a presence that I guess Shane Waldron just doesn't have. Plus, the resurgence of the offense on Sunday stimulated the idea that perhaps Brown should be the Bears' potential interim coach if they were to get rid of Matt Eberflus, or maybe get some head coaching looks. Do you buy, sell, or think
this is moronic?
Brown should be considered for a head coaching job, given his limited resume? Aldo, because you put this question in there, I'm asking you first.
Well, thanks. I actually think that you can buy the idea that he should be considered for a head coaching job, but you need to wait till after the season. I think you can sell the idea that there is just no way he should be a head coach after just a half season of calling plays. And I think that it is moronic to even suggest the idea. I wrote the question. It's moronic to even suggest the idea that we should start considering him as a head coach now after one game.
So you did all three of those? You bought, you sold, and you thought it was moronic. Danny, that's worse than me, because I usually put stuff on like layaway. I Aldo did all three. Like there was no distinction.
You put him on layaway. He went on a shopping spree.
And then sold it. He bought it from the store and then sold it in the parking lot.
And then sold it, right. How moronic of me.
Danny, what is your thoughts on
Well, initially when I read the question, I thought, no, sell. There's no way you can say Thomas Brown is head coach material right now. But I talked myself into buying it, because this is how it goes. I told Thomas Brown is highly respected within NFL circles. I've said that before, right? He's a guy that's got plenty of head coaching interviews before in the past as well. And a lot of people scouts have told me he's got a presence to him. He's got a presence about him, and maybe possibly a head coach presence. So a good way to find out which would be something that the Bears probably won't do, is firing Matt Eberflus, giving Thomas Brown the interim head coaching job, see how he develops Caleb Williams the rest of the season, 6-7 games left to go, and let Eric Washington run the defense and say, hey, you know what? This guy actually does a pretty good job. Our team actually responds to this guy. This guy is really developing our quarterback. That would be the prudent thing to do, to say, all right, do we have someone on our coaching staff that could potentially be our head coach? But they're not going to do it. So what's going to happen is by the end of the year, when they fire Eberflus, or unless I'm correct in terms of my prediction earlier today that they're going to actually fire him mid-season, if they do fire, if they don't fire Eberflus, let's say, and they let him just kind of run off, off on his own, Thomas Brown might not get a shot. He might get an interview, but I don't think he'll get a shot to prove himself. And you can't go into this next hiring cycle with an unknown, a huge unknown. Now they're probably going to hire an offensive coordinator, a first-time head coach, most likely, right? Unless someone shocks us, unless someone gets let go that we're not expecting. Hint, hint. Kyle Shanahan, 49ers. Keep that in mind. Something like crazy like that happens. But they're probably going to hire a first-time head coach, so we'll have to kind of see how that happens. But it's just not. It's something that I talked myself into being not something that's idiotic, if they give themselves an opportunity to see develop on the football field the rest of the season. But will they do that? That's where I have my doubts.
I'm going to sell it just because I think that there's just not enough time to put a resume out to say that guy needs to be a head coach. Now, what I think can happen is if they go on a maybe not even a tear, but they have a lot of offensive production. Caleb starts playing better. The offense looks night and day better than what it was under Shane Waldron. He can coach himself into getting an offensive coordinator job next year for a good team. I think that's a real possibility. I think if the Bears look good on offense, he will be a sought after prime offensive coordinator if he can do that. I don't think that you're going to see enough to say that needs to be the guy. And we're gonna and what GM is going to say, I'm going to put my job on the line on this guy that had 7 games worth of tape to really prove himself. So I think that, yeah. And to your point, Danny, yeah, if Shanahan's fired in San Francisco, you can basically back up the truck, but he will also have 1,000 suitors. Like there will be teams that will be after him. Think about the jobs that are going to be open. Now, I still think the Bears is a very is going to be a wanted job, but because you look at the Jets, the Jaguars will be open. The Cowboys will probably be open.
Giants will be open.
The Giants could potentially be open where, Brian Dable could be looking for a job. I'm sure I'm missing the teams that already fired their coaches. The Saints still be open. And so I think
will probably be open with.
It'll be. You look at those situations where, Chicago's looking pretty good because you have a young quarterback on a rookie deal, and you talk about the talent that he has. You have good defensive parts. You have pretty good talent on the outside on offense. You got to shore up the offensive line a little bit. I think that'll be a coveted job for a lot of guys. So we'll see. But
we assume that the coach is going to like Caleb Williams, right? Because that's the thing is, if you had the number 1 overall pick, this is why you do this last year, where now you bring in your coach and now he gets to choose the quarterback he wants to groom and most likely it would be Caleb Williams anyway, right? But now you're kind of throwing it on there like, all right, this is the quarterback. Do you want the job or not? And that might turn some guys off, especially guys that are pursued by multiple teams.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan failed with Trey Lance, and he was behind moving up in the draft to select Trey Lance. And so I'm concerned that because that was a failure of how he might develop or not develop Caleb Williams. Guys, I was on the internet today on Twitter for a few minutes, and I saw this, and I want you guys to react to it. Let me read this quickly from Kirsten Tannis, who's a really good follow on Twitter. She writes, there is probably some archaic NFL rule forbidding players from interviewing coaching candidates, but I wish Bose, assuming he's still GM, could include Caleb as part of the interview process for the next Bears play caller head coach. Not in the initial rounds, but if you get to the 3 finalists, gaining his perspective from a conversation with each candidate. You guys buy or sell that?
I buy that. Actually, I buy it from the head coaching interviewee as well, because he's going to want to get to know Caleb. He's going to want to say, all right, can I work with this kid? How does he decipher some of my plays and in terms of his memorization, play recall, so on and so forth. So no, I think that's 100% accurate. I think that's something that actually might happen. Where like I said, not the initial round of guys, but once you cut it down to the final 2 or 3 guys, have him sit with Caleb, have him sit with some of the other, veterans and say, all right, like, what do you think? And get feedback back and forth. So yeah, I definitely can see that happening for sure.
Yeah. The last thing you want is your GM to make a hire and then you introduce the head coach and then they meet each other. They start talking to each other like, oh my God, I hate this guy, or I can't work with this guy. And then you just basically signed your own firing papers as a GM, because that's not going to work. So you want to make sure that those two can coexist, because ideally they're going to be spending a lot of time together, and you want that to be it doesn't have to be a kumbaya relationship, but it needs to be a good, well-oiled, efficient, professional relationship. So I don't care if it's Caleb or any other young quarterback. That I think that you need to get their input. And like you said, Danny, the interviewee would also want to understand what he's getting into as well, because I said this last week. It's one thing to hire a good head coach. It's also, or a good offensive mind. It's another thing to say, do you have the ability to actually develop a quarterback, or is your scheme custom fit for a guy that's already kind of polished and knows the NFL game? Are you able to bring a quarterback along, or do you just have a really good system where you need an established quarterback to run it? So I think that you have to really take that into consideration, where it's just like, make sure maybe Matt Nagy had a great offensive system. And I'm just saying that I don't really mean that, but maybe he had a great offensive system, and like he needed a Patrick Mahomes to run it, which Patrick Mahomes covers up a lot of warts in an offensive system. But I'm just saying, make sure that coach has the ability to bring along a young quarterback.
Right. And then one thing the hot name right now is Ben Johnson, right? The offensive coordinator for the Lions. But Ben Johnson, he's got Hendon Hooker, a 2nd-round pick, sitting on a bench, and he has looked horrible when he's had an opportunity to play. Again, it's been preseason. So he's been doing it with a veteran like Jared Goff. What if Ben Johnson says, I don't want a young quarterback, I want an established veteran, right? Whatever it's Kirk Cousins or pick a veteran that's going to be available next year. So that's the thing is like, everyone's going to say, oh, Ben Johnson, but we don't know what Ben Johnson wants. We don't know what he likes, right? And what if Ben Johnson doesn't want Caleb Williams? Now, if you're a Bears organization, you've already invested the number 1 overall pick in this guy. Well, that's why you can't. What's that?
He's going to be the quarterback, so you're going to have to find a coach.
The quarterback. So if Ben Johnson doesn't want him, guess what? Ben Johnson's not getting the job. So that's the thing. That's why doing this kind of half-assed thing they do every other year, seems like, draft a quarterback, fire the coach, and now bring a coach that's going to want to be with that quarterback is really counterproductive, and that's why the franchise is where it is right now.
I think also that the idea that Ben Johnson is the panacea to all the Bears' offensive problems is a little bit out there, because this guy has the best offensive line in the NFL. He's got the best running back tandem. He's got a quarterback that, because of Ben Johnson, but also other factors, is playing MVP level football. And he's got the St. Brown kid who's really a top 5 wide receiver. They've got everything going for him to excel as an offensive coordinator. If he comes here, maybe if he brings that Detroit Lions offensive line, we could see that type of production. But it's not likely going to happen right away, at least.
Yeah, I'm a huge Ben Johnson fan, but you're 100% right. He's a first-time head coach. He's never been a head coach before, right? We didn't know who Ben Johnson was 3 years ago. Right? He was the guy that was on the staff, and then they fired the offensive coordinator and made him the play caller. Lo and behold, everything comes to fruition there in Detroit. The offensive line, the quarterback, the receivers, the tight end, Laporta, we forgot to mention there as well. And everything looks great now. But, so that's, again, we're taking a shot on an unknown, a first-time head coach. And I know he's the guy that everyone's raving about, but we don't know what his philosophy is in terms of, with a young quarterback. Can he develop Caleb Williams? Is he a guy that's prone to wanting some veteran guys? We might even get a guy, Bobby Slowick, the Texans offensive coordinator. He was getting interviewed left and right last year. Now there's talk about, him being fired in Houston. Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like you don't know who these guys are. These guys are young guys that are up and coming. Yeah, you might hit the lotto on one of these guys and have the next great offensive mind, if you will. But you're taking a chance, and none of these guys that are coming out that are going to be, for me, like surefire. You got Ben Johnson, you got your next head coach. We don't know that, right? It's all got to develop. And Aldo laid out some great factors there in terms of why he's succeeding in Detroit. That's not going to be here in Chicago. He's got some pieces here, but he's going to have to develop those here and form his staff here as well. So, but we'll see how that turns out. But again, these are not slam dunk for sure hires.
And that's why I think that if they do go with the route where they hire someone who's a first-time head coach, I think Bears fans are just going to be like, okay, You're not gonna be super excited until you see the product on the field, because we've seen that before. So and we've seen new head coaches come in with a second-year quarterback and it all fall apart. So I think that it's like, I think no matter who I don't think there's going to be outside of maybe what we talked about with Shanahan, maybe because of that name and his track record. Outside of that, is there a name that they could hire where Bears fans unitedly are like, oh my God, I can't believe he's coming to Chicago? Like, is there a coach that I think saw 3.5 it's saying if Stefanski's let go of in Cleveland and he comes to Chicago, is that somebody that would come? Like, what is there a name that could come to Chicago and there's just going to be 100% enthusiasm moving forward?
Well, I don't know how Aldo feels, but for me, Mike Vrabel would be a great head coach, right? He'd be a great head coach. Now you have to pair him up with an offensive play caller. You know, with Mike Vrabel with like Kevin Stefanski, if he gets fired in Cleveland, that'd be very intriguing for me, right? So I think that Stefanski, I think, is an innovative play caller. I think he'd be a good fit with Caleb. Brian Daboll. You know, if he gets fired in New York and you get a Mike Vrabel here, do you want a Vrabel and a Daboll combination where Daboll now, who helped, you know, mature and develop Josh Allen, you know, is he the guy that can help Caleb Williams? Now he went in New York and he had one great year with Daniel Jones and he flopped. Is that a Daboll or is that a Daniel Jones issue? You know, those are questions you're going to have. But, you know, for me, Vrabel will be a great head coach, right? You get a nice, tough team, you know, physical offensive line, physical defensive line in the mold of what Bears, you know, fans want. But then for me, that question with Vrabel is, who is your staff? Who is your offensive coordinator? One of the things that kind of, you know, his downfall, if you will, in Tennessee was his offensive coordinator, right? You know, he lost, the name drops on my, the offensive coordinator for the Steelers now.
Arthur Smith, or
Arthur Smith, and that went downhill from there, right? He lost him, and Tannehill had a great year under Arthur Smith, and that went downhill from there. You know, Derrick Henry got older, even though he's on a great year here with Baltimore. But I'm saying, like, that for me, that hire, I'd have a great head coach, but I need to know who his offensive coordinator is going to be, and then what's his plan in terms of the quarterback coach and how you're going to help develop Caleb Williams. That's going to be the important thing to me. So
I think a lot of fans, John, could get up for the name that Hector Zambrano just put up on the screen. Dave Taub, the former special teams coordinator for the Chicago Bears, who helped elevate Devin Hester to Hall of Fame status. He's still beloved here in Chicago. I know Greg Gabriel is close friends with him, and Taub told him that he thinks his time is past. He did go on job interviews several years ago, but he hasn't been invited for a head coaching job interview in the last few years. So he's probably not on anyone's prime candidate list. But to answer your question, I could see the Chicago Bears fans really getting behind a Dave Taub hire.
Yeah, but I think it goes back to what Danny was talking about. That's great. Who are you bringing in? Because that's like who's running the offense and defense here, and so I think that's a big question. And I think to Danny's point, yeah, you bring in Vrabel, there would be enthusiasm, but it's going to be like a cool. But because then if you like you said, if you bring in Stefanski and Vrabel, you're going to be really excited, fully knowing that if it works, you're going to lose Stefanski in probably like a year because he's going to get rehired to go. He's going to be a head coach somewhere, and that's the risk that you run by hiring a defensive coach. If your offense is firing, you know, then you run the real risk of losing that coordinator that is bringing along your young quarterback. And we haven't seen it yet in Houston, and we haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen it in Detroit yet with Ben Johnson sticking around. But I think more often than not, like you said, Danny, there's always the flavor of the weak coordinator. And if you don't strike when the iron's hot, you may not get another chance. You remember, I think Greg Roman was a hot commodity for a little while, and then he ended up getting fired. And so it's like you can go through all these interviews for 1 year and like, no, I'm gonna stick around. And then if your team stinks the next year and then it's for things that are maybe out of your control, you ain't getting those same amount of interviews the next year. So I think that that's the kind of risk that you run. But you know what?
And one thing with Vrabel, he's currently working with the Browns this year under Stefanski. So if that's a combination, that's something where if that does happen, you know, if he is fired in Cleveland, that's something where I could see Stefanski coming and being the offensive coordinator under Vrabel here in Chicago.
I can also see them elevating Vrabel to head coach then in Cleveland. So it's who knows what's going to happen there. But hey, let's do some predictions, because Aldo, after the Commanders game, you started to suggest that the Bears might not win another game this season, and Danny, you kind of said the same thing today. So what are our predictions moving into this week? Because y'all might think the Bears might not win another game throughout this year. So, Aldo, I'll stick with you. Predictions for this game.
I think the Bears are going to lose. Week 12 against the Vikings, on Thanksgiving Day against the Lions out in San Francisco, Week 14, on the road on Monday night against the Vikings, Week 15, and they're going to lose at home against the Lions, and probably a few days later on a Thursday night, Week 17, the day after Christmas, and they'll lose the final game. They're going to lose all of these games unless Matt Eberflus is fired. That's my prediction. I really do believe that. I think that this team, like I said earlier, there's a virus, and that virus is called Eberflus 3. So unless we get rid of the virus, we're not going to win another game.
I think we can shorten this. We can call it EF3. Make it a little more cooler.
I like that. I like that.
There's no vaccine for the EF3 virus, guys. So, but anyway, no, I'm with Aldo. John, I honestly cannot see them beating any of these teams. Now, you might say, oh, well, it's Seattle here, day after Christmas. If you watch Seattle play recently, they just beat the 49ers in San Francisco. So I just, could they win a game or two? Sure. Could they beat the Vikings and surprise us all on Sunday? Sure, any given Sunday, right? But I can't go into these games and say, all right, yep, no, the Bears are going to win. Actually, I think if you go do the analytics, I think they're not favored in any of these remaining games. So I'm with Aldo. I don't see them winning any of these games. That's why if you do, they already lost 4 in a row. If you lose the next 5, that's 9 in a row. Like I said, John, that's not even his longest streak in terms of losing streaks for Eberflus. At that point, I think you've got to cut the cord just for team morale. Let them finish the last 3 games of the season on some sort of positive note. And now you get a chance to see what Thomas Brown does, at least for 2 or 3 games as a head coach. And he could be possibly your next head coach. We'll see.
Aldo, throw that schedule graphic back up, because I can't believe I'm going to be the positive one. That never happens.
That's right.
I think they win this week. I honestly do. I think that they're gonna beat the Vikings this week, and then I think that they can beat Seattle the day after Christmas. Seattle off of a holiday, coming from the West Coast, I know that doesn't mean as much going to Central Time, but going into Chicago, it could be chilly. Anything can happen if there's snow on the ground. I think they can get 2 more wins, and that's me being positive. So that would put them at what, 6-11? Is that what they would end up at? 6-11, which is the inverse of what I actually predicted at the beginning of the year. So I guess that's kind of some poetic justice there. But isn't it kind of interesting how it's year 3 of the rebuild, and this could be they could have a worse record than they did last year. So I think that that unless Eberflus is gone, like Aldo said, I think maybe 2 wins are there, maybe. So I think that they can. Both of them are going to be at home. They're going to win this coming Sunday, and maybe the day after. I almost said Thanksgiving, the day after Christmas, which would be a great Christmas present for me if they can end up winning on it, because it's a primetime. They have a couple more primetime games, basically, because they play on Thanksgiving, and then don't they have a Monday night game and then a Thursday night game? We got. Yes. The nation has to watch the Bears on again on national TV 3 more times.
Yes,
it's our gift to the world.
I hate that. And what are they thinking with the scheduling? But I guess they also thought the Bears were going to be better. I guess I can tell you right now that TBD Week 18, that's going to be a noon game. I can tell you that right now.
Absolutely.
That ain't gonna mean nothing. So, I think maybe 2 more wins there. So I get, and I can't believe that's me being like the highest in the Bears, saying they're gonna get 2 more wins. But anyway, let's start landing this plane here. Danny, you got a college football game you're targeting this weekend, because we're already looking at prospects for the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a Big Ten tilt here, guys. Number 5, Indiana, the surprise of college football, really goes into the big horseshoe in Columbus versus number 2, Ohio State. A matchup of 2 top 5 teams. That's curious to see, is Indiana, the way they're playing, is that the head coach has got a long-term contract extension with some pretty bag there in terms of money there. Are they legit? Are they the real deal? Or is Ohio State Ryan Day gonna come choke this one away as well? So curious to see that. That's going to be a game that's obviously with Ohio State loaded with NFL talent there. That's a team to keep an eye on there. But that's going to be a big noon kickoff here in Central Time Zone on Saturday morning.
And Aldo, what's happening with the rest of the week here at the bar? We got a lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shows, and that's over the next 7 days. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, it's Bear Their Souls with Dan Aguirre, Johnny Santucci, and myself. I texted with Dan Aguirre on Monday morning. He told me for 4 hours he was curled up in his room. His wife couldn't get him to come out of the bedroom. He was just curled up, so upset with the Bears' loss yesterday.
It's a huge curl.
It's a huge curl because he's a big man.
He's a tall fella.
So I'm interested to get his thoughts at length about how his heart has been broken again by the Green Bay Packers. He hates the Green Bay Packers more than I think he hates, the Russians or whoever we're supposed to hate now they on the international stage. But so that will be our programming for tomorrow, and then we're loaded with programming the rest of the week. I would like to mention one show in particular. Somebody big just died. For those of you guys who are as old as me might remember Bob Love, named Butterbean. He had such a sweet outside jumper in the 1960s and 70s for the Chicago Bulls. He recently passed away, and Mike North and Joe Mandel will eulogize him Thursday, right after the Mac and Reed show.
Excellent. Well, I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna plug this. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you press the like button, share the show on your social media accounts, and subscribe to the Barroom Network. We have Fresh Bears programming 6 days a week. Not a lot of people can say that. So really, really excited about what's going on here at the Barroom Network. But that will do it for this edition of Buffone 55. We appreciate everyone in the chat room, listening to us live, watching us live, the podcast, whether you're listening to us on your way to work, home from work, whatever it is. Appreciate each and every one of you. You guys are the reason why we keep doing this show, because if no one was listening, what would we be doing here? So we appreciate you, whether it's your first time or 55th time, podcast version, audio version, video version. But that will do it for us. For Danny Shimon and Aldo Gandia, I'm John Buffone. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.